835 feet.
Hey yo.
This is the Fantasy Den, presented by Buffalo Boxing Club and RotoSurance.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Fantasy Den. I'm your host, Josh, and I'm here with Tom. We're going to talk about Week 13's matchups right before the playoffs are kicking in, so it's an important week for a lot of people out there. We also have notes regarding injuries and questionable guys. Starts and sits coming up. We're going to be talking about the Cowboys and Saints games from last night. Awesome game. But hey, we got to talk about Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt gets cut tonight. We're recording on Friday, the 30th. Obviously, TMZ leaked the video earlier today about the altercation, domestic violence situation with him and a female. And as a result, the Chiefs have decided to cut Kareem Hunt.
It's really unbelievable news, and it's a bad circumstance. You know, the video is bad. You don't want to see that. I don't want to see assault of any kind on anybody. But it's just unbelievable for a team that truly is Super Bowl contenders with a young running back who led the league in rushing last year, who was on his way to the Pro Bowl again this year. But all that aside, he's cut. He's not going to play again this year, and there's a good chance he's suspended for games going into next season. It's a toss-up to where he goes and where he lands. For fantasy implications, Spencer Ware needs to be grabbed instantly. I know there's probably leagues who already have him. You know, we get into that tight playoff spot and so people going out there and scooping up handcuffs. That's what a lot of teams tend to do. If he's out there on your waivers, you need to run and grab this guy. They're playing against the Oakland Raiders this weekend. They've given up the most rushing yards this season, running backs. So I can see Spencer Ware, being in line for a good game here. But again, like we talk about all the time, you want running backs on these high-powered, potent offenses. And it doesn't get any more high-powered than the Kansas City Chiefs. But as far as the Kareem Hunt and all that goes, just a negative, bad situation all around. The crazy thing is how quick the turnaround was, with the fact that the video came out today and, I don't know, within, 10 hours of the video dropping. I'm not accurate with that timestamp, but, within the same day, they released it. It's just crazy.
Yeah,
usually teams don't move that quick with certain things. With a player of that caliber, a young guy like that. Now, if he was an older vet who had some wear on his tires and there's, other baggage in his background, I could see it. But the fact that they moved that quick and it was just decisive, they're showing you where they stand, the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, and honestly, I applaud it. I respect it. It's something that a lot of other teams or organizations may have come to do eventually, but the Chiefs acted on it quickly. And again, you have to respect it. Let's move to some other notes, Tom. Aqib Talib has been activated off the IR. He's supposed to start this weekend. They get Detroit. I think that's going to be a tough matchup for Kenny Golladay. He's going to boost secondary that very much needs it. That Rams defense definitely get a bump up.
They do, but I don't know how effective he's going to be, and I don't know how many total snaps he's going to play. Certainly helps their defense getting a corner like Talib back, but for this game, I'm not scared off the Lions players, actually. I think they're in store for a big game. Vegas has the total at 55 points, so this should be a high-scoring game, and they're at Detroit. I know Stafford's been bad this season. We talked about it last episode, but the Rams have been bad against the receiver, so I actually think this is going to be a good spot for the Lions receivers.
And in that same game, Kerryon Johnson ruled out with his knee injury. What does that do for a guy like LeGarrette Blount? Any interest there?
Yeah, a sneaky start. Rams have actually been bad against the run. And this could be a sneaky start for him. LeGarrette Blount's usually a touchdown or bust guy. We saw what he did when he got the 88 yards on Thanksgiving Day. And with Kareem Hunt being out, I could see owners running to grab Blount. If Ware's already gone, they don't have him. There's not a lot of options there. So Blount could be a sneaky start.
Sproles for the Eagles expected to return to Monday Night Football. Does this matter for fantasy football?
No, you're not running to grab him. But I'll tell you what it matters for. It matters for the real-life Eagles because we talked about it on the last episode. At least I mentioned what I think is going on with the Eagles. They lack the weapons there. They don't have a lot of weapons to help out. And I know Sproles is up there and he's been in the league for a while, but any help they can get, especially a pass catcher out of the backfield that can be Wentz's safety valve, it's good news for the Eagles.
Marquise Goodwin will be out for the 49ers due to personal reasons. They're taking on Seattle anyways. I don't know that anybody was feeling confident about starting him this week, but something to note. Trubisky, doubtful, most likely going to sit this week, so Chase Daniel will get the start again. I don't think anybody's in a position where they're having to go out and play him. Even in daily fantasy, he's just not a quarterback, to me, capable with the wide receivers around him to put up much of a fantasy worthy day.
You know, I'll say this: this is the last week before playoffs for the majority of leagues out there. If you're willing to roll the dice on Chase Daniel, I mean, that's guts right there that I don't have. I wouldn't be willing to make that play. No, he had a good game on Thanksgiving Day, but there's better options out there. I think you're really playing with fire. I think if you're going with Chase Daniel in the last week of the season.
Yeah, we strongly advise against starting a guy like Chase Daniel. Let's talk about the game from last night, Tom. Saints Cowboys 10-13. The Cowboys edged them out here at home. Now I got to give you credit because you talked about this in the last podcast. You said you think the Cowboys are going to win and you think it's going to be a low scoring game. I mean, you nailed it right on the head.
Yeah, I didn't think it would be this bad, though. I thought this would be like, a 20-28 game or something like that. I thought the Saints would be up in the 20s and the Cowboys would be around there. They would get the win. I thought so, but I had no idea Drew Brees would play this bad. He looked shaky out there. And, the thing is, all the Saints, all of them, they just looked off. They looked like they weren't ready to play. They just looked like they didn't have the energy. Really, I'm thinking about Kamara, Brees, and Mike Thomas. They just all kind of looked out of it. They looked like they weren't really ready to play.
Well, I think you have to tip your hat to the Cowboys defense.
Well,
I think that Mike Thomas looked great with what he, when he got the ball. He was doing his thing. I just think the defense smothered them.
Yeah, the biggest impact, the biggest thing I noticed with the Dallas Cowboys defense is that they're fast and they're all around the ball. The two studs in the middle, Jalen Smith and Leighton Vander Esch, they're monsters. They're just monsters. I don't know any two young linebackers that you're going to take over these two guys right now. Great core. And the defensive line is getting after Brees. That was the thing last night. They were getting in his face and they were causing so much pressure. Not to mention Byron Jones. Nobody talks about this corner. They drafted him and he was one of these guys who was a project because he had great measurables, but he played safety and call. He didn't have a lot. He wasn't a shutdown corner. He had the measurables and he was a project. Now, what he's been doing this season, he's shut down. And he shut down Michael Thomas last night. Again, the whole defense as a whole shut down the Saints. It wasn't just one guy. I mean, they got pressure on Brees, which forced him into some bad decisions, and he didn't have any time to get rid of the ball. And Byron Jones just shut down Michael Thomas. But that's the thing. The Cowboys, it was a total team effort. Their defense just showed up last night, and they overwhelmed the Saints. It was unbelievable, actually. I don't think anybody saw us coming. Now, I said they would win, but I still didn't think the Saints were going to put up 10 points. I thought they would get you 20 points minimum, at least.
Another thing to note here is ball security was a big issue in this game. There were 6 total fumbles in this game last night. 3 from each side here, and they were all costly. I mean, of course, a turnover can win or lose a game here. And you saw that at the end, Dak fumbles on his drive outside, maybe 10, 15 yards. They're about to score, go ahead and seal the game up. He fumbles. Drew Brees turns right around, throws a pick. I mean, it was a game of turnovers and defense, really. Nobody really wowed in this game. Zeke Elliott had a nice day.
Yeah, this is the Zeke that you want to see. The guy, you're getting 23 carries, 76 yards, involved in the pass game. That's been the biggest. This has been his best career year in receiving. 60 yards receiving and the touchdown. That's what you want to do see if you're the Zeke owner. That's what the Cowboys need to do. Just feed him consistently. And Amari Cooper, I think, has just opened up so much for that Dallas offense. He had 75 yards last night. And he helps take away the attention from Zeke. And Zeke Elliott right now, the past 3-4 games, he looks like such a stud. The guy we all thought we were getting when we drafted him in the first top 5 picks. So this is the Cowboys. This is their blueprint for success. Dak kind of manages the game. Zeke controls the offense, and their defense takes over.
Yeah, Dak had 2 costly fumbles in this game, but he also made some nice plays, especially with his feet, running for some key first downs for them.
He did, but he had some missed throws, and he had Gallup on that wide open touchdown where he just overthrew him by a little bit. And that's the thing with Dak. You want to see more improvement from him because he's missing those plays, and also like I said, the fumbles. I think he has 11 fumbles this season, leads the league in fumbles, which is not a good stat, obviously. And so you need to see Dak get a little more consistent. That's his biggest problem right now is this consistency. If Dak was more consistent, this team would be just all the more dangerous because they got the other pieces there, especially now that their defense is there. And Michael Gallup seems to be coming on a little more too. Last night, it's 76 yards, 5 catches. He's starting to look better and better. So if Dak gets a little more consistent, this Dallas Cowboys team is going to be dangerous. But another thing to mention with them, if you said to anybody that they were going to beat the Eagles and Atlanta and the Saints, I don't think anybody would have picked the Cowboys for those games. So they've just been coming on hot at the right time.
Well, especially taking on the Eagles and the Falcons away. I mean, those are impressive victories, and they're looking great right now. I mean, obviously they're riding the defense and Zeke. You need to see better play from Dak. Let me ask you this. A tight end that some people were starting to pick up on was Dan Arnold for the New Orleans Saints. Only had 2 targets last night, only had 20 yards, but he did have that almost touchdown that he fumbled on.
It was a great hit.
Is this a guy that would be worth going out to get?
With the Saints offense with Drew Brees, there's always a chance, but that's the thing with Dan Arnold. I think he's always going to be limited in his targets because of all the other mouths to feed. So in my opinion, you got better options out there. Now, this offense can get a guy going, but I just think that there's better options.
So yeah, not a great fantasy game, but it was a fun game to watch as a football fan to kick off the Week 13. Let's keep it moving and talk about our starts and sits for Week 13. At QB, who do you like this week?
I'm going out on a limb here, but I'm actually taking Derek Carr. Now, he hasn't been good this whole season. He hasn't been good lately, but I think the fact that they're at home, and I think the fact that what just happened with Kareem Hunt and the Chiefs, that's going to have an effect on them a little bit. You can't tell me that that's not going to be on their minds. You can't tell me that mentally that's not going to have an effect. Now, the NFL is a business. These guys are going to go do their job, but I have a feeling the Raiders at home, they're coming to play. They know they got to put up points to play with the Chiefs, and Derek Carr is the man to get them the points. I had a feeling Derek Carr is going to have a big game this weekend.
It's a bold take, but I like it. I'm going a little safer route. I like Roethlisberger this week. He's back at home, coming off a loss to Denver. I expect him to bounce back in a big way. You know, he had some criticism for some of his teammates, including Antonio Brown, who I also expect a nice week from. I think they're going to hook up big time and expect another big game from Juju. But I think the Steelers all the way around are going to have an awesome week against the Chargers, who are a little hurt. So I like him. On the flip side of that, who are you sitting this week at QB?
I'm sitting Baker Mayfield. They're at Houston. So Houston against quarterbacks this season has given up 18 touchdowns to 14 picks. And I think that Baker has been playing well, and it would be hard to sit him with the streak they've been on, but Houston is coming on strong. They're a very hot team right now. And J.J. Watt might miss this game, which makes it a little tougher, but Houston defense at home, I see them getting all over Mayfield, and I just see him having a tough time hitting his guys and getting open, so I think he's going to struggle in this game.
Yeah, I don't like him either this week. Another guy I don't like much is Tom Brady, who, let's be honest, he hasn't been playing great this season. You know, he's middle of the pack QB right now, not the Tom Brady we're used to seeing. He hasn't had Gronk for a lot of the season. You know, team has been a little beat up. But I don't like them taking on the Vikings. Even though they're playing in Foxborough, I think you just have to temper your expectations. The Vikings allow the sixth least amount of points to a quarterback. So you have to take all that into consideration. You know, what the Patriots have become the past couple seasons have been a dink and dunk type of team. I think they'll try and do that here, but I think they're going to have a tough time against this Vikings defense, who coming off a big win against the Packers. For the running backs, who you liking this week?
So I got to go Aaron Jones here. Cardinals are second worst in average fantasy points per game to running back, the second worst in the league. The last 4 weeks, they've given up 397 yards and 4 touchdowns. And the fact that Aaron Jones is coming on, he's hot, and this game is at Green Bay, I feel like they're going to feed him all day. They're not going to have to do much in the passing game. So I just see this being a huge Aaron Jones day. He's going to take over, and they can beat the Cardinals without Aaron Rodgers having to go crazy here. So I think a big Aaron Jones game is in store this weekend.
I love Aaron Jones this week. He's got 5 touchdowns over his last 3 games. He's averaging 85 yards in those 3 games. I mean, he's a monster right now, and they need him more than ever with their season on the line. He was one of the guys I really liked. Another guy who I really liked, I've been trying to trade for in a couple leagues, is Phillip Lindsay. To me, one of the most underrated running backs not being talked about. He gets a soft matchup against Cincinnati. They are playing in Cincinnati, which isn't great, but the Denver's rolling right now. They're coming off 2 good wins. They beat the Steelers. They beat the Chargers. I think everything's clicking for them now. They want to keep the game off Case Keenum's shoulders as much as possible, and this is the young man that helps them do that. Talk about your sits at running back.
Marlon Mack, if he plays, I think he's a sit. The Jags defense, they've only given up 4 touchdowns this whole season to running back. The last 4 weeks, they've given up 170 total yards and no touchdowns to running backs. Marlon Mack, he's a good player, obviously, but past he's struggled a little bit. This is a tough matchup. I think it's a stay away spot from him.
And the health has to be concerning too.
Well, that's a huge.
He's not the picture of good health.
Yeah, that's the thing. But this defense is just no joke, and they seem to have been getting hotter the last month or so.
Tevin Coleman has got to be my sit this week. He gets Baltimore. They're playing at home, which helps a little bit, but Baltimore is the toughest run defense in the league. That's not encouraging. Coleman is the 15th ranked running back in standard leagues right now, but he sure hasn't looked it. He hasn't scored over 10 points in the last 3 games. I don't see that changing in this game. I think you'll see a good mix of him and Ito Smith again, and I expect them to do what they do, which is pass the ball.
Oh, well, Matt Ryan's been on fire this season. Nobody's talking about him. He's actually the third-ranked quarterback in NFL.com standard leagues.
All right, let's talk wide receiver. Who's your start this week?
So you talked about him earlier, how you were staying away. I'm all aboard him this week. I think he's having a big game. It's Kenny Galladay. The Rams are the fourth worst average points per game to the receiver, meaning that they give up the fourth most. The last 4 weeks, they've given the most touchdowns to wide receiver position. And his targets over the last 3 games, 13, 14, and 8. So those are great. But not only that, he's really their truly only big deep threat option they have in Detroit. They do not have anybody else. Marvin Jones is gone. TJ Jones might as well be gone because he never makes an appearance on the field when they play. And Kenny Galladay really is an emerging, true, talented receiver. So I think Kenny Galladay is in store for a big, big game. Like I said, this Vegas total in this game is one of the highest of the week. And they have to score. I think it is the highest of the week at 55. They have to score to keep up with the Rams. And this is at Detroit, so I like him better. So I think Kenny Galladay eats this weekend.
Yeah, I've got a surprising start this week. I'm going with Demaryius Thomas. I think he builds off his game last week. He was 4-5, 38 yards and 2 touchdowns, so it wasn't a great game aside from the touchdowns, but I think they'll continue to get him going. I think that's going to be a part of their success throughout the season with a spotty run game in Lamar Miller, who, credit to him, has looked better. But Keke Coutee, the rookie, continues to show that he's not 100% healthy, can't seem to stay healthy. He's going to be a game-time decision in this game with his hamstring. So I really like Demaryius Thomas. I expect him to be heavily involved. For your sit of the week?
This one might be a little surprising, and I understand if you don't sit him because of where he is ranking-wise and who he is to your team, but my sit is going to be Emmanuel Sanders. And most of that has to do with Case Keenum, not really Emmanuel Sanders. Since he is bad, and it's a good matchup, but the last 4 weeks they've given up the 5th fewest passing yards, or receiving yards, I should say. And the last 4 games, Emmanuel Sanders' targets are 5, 4, 6, and then last week was 14, which is great. But Case Keenum in his last 5 games has 6 total touchdowns, and he doesn't have any 300-yard passing games. I'm just scared off of it. I know Emmanuel Sanders has been making, for lack of better terms, chicken salad out of chicken shit this season with what they have going on there. But I'm scared of it, and I think, like you mentioned earlier, this is a Phillip Lindsay spot. I just think it's one of those things where they ain't going to have to do a whole lot to win this game, so I don't see Sanders having a big one here.
For me, my sit of the week at receiver has got to be T.Y. Hilton. He comes into this game with a tough matchup. He gets the Jags in Jacksonville. Jags are allowing the 5th least amount of points to a wide receiver. Now, of course, Hilton's the kind of guy who can break off a big play, especially with Andrew Luck's big arm, but he's also battling a groin injury coming into this game. That's concerning. Now, they took him off the injury report, but we know how groins can be. They're tricky like the hamstring. They can flare up, any given moment. It could happen in warm-ups. So, for me, I'm staying away from him in a very important Week 13 matchup.
It's tough. The only thing I will say is they might not have Ramsey, so that could change a little bit.
That is something to note. If they sit Ramsey, scratch that. But let's talk tight ends. I know it's real hit or miss. I know there's not a lot to pick from, but who's your start?
So I got to go Jared Cook. In terms of average points to tight end, Kansas City's the 3rd worst. This season, they've given up the 2nd most yards to tight end of all teams in the league. Jared Cook really is the only true option in the passing game for Oakland. At least he's been for most of the season. And he's the 6th most targeted tight end. Like I talked about earlier, I think Carr's going to have a big game here. I think Cook gets involved, so I really like Jared Cook. And I know that's not saying a whole lot. You're probably starting Jared Cook if you have him, but I think he's in store for a big game.
For me, Travis Kelce. Obviously, he's a stud. He gets a soft matchup against Oakland. No Kareem Hunt. No Sammy Watkins. Opens up the door even more for him to just eat. Your sit of the week at tight end?
Yeah, this one's tough because, again, it's tight end, it's thin. We always harp on that, but also he's one of the few playmakers on their team. But for me, it's got to be Jordan Reed. They're at Philadelphia. First off, Jordan Reed might not play this game. So if he doesn't play, obviously, but I think it's a tough matchup. The Eagles only give up 2 touchdowns the whole season to tight end. And 8 career games against the Eagles, he averages 41 yards per game. So I'm scared of it. I think Colt McCoy is going to have a tough game here at Philly. I think the Eagles, think it's a division game. The Eagles are right there. They know they got to come with it. They're at Philadelphia, like I said. So I think Jordan Reed is in a tough spot here. I'm staying away. And not to mention it's Monday night, last game. So it's tough one for me. I think I'm staying away from him.
I've got an unpopular one here, but I'm sitting Njoku. Coming off a nice week against Cincinnati, he put up 63 yards and a touchdown. But let's be honest, it's the Bengals. This isn't a great team by any stretch of the imagination. Now, they're playing the Texans, who do allow the 6th most points to a tight end. So I understand if you're going to play him. But for me, I'm staying away from him. He hasn't been the picture of consistency. He's got 3 touchdowns on the season in a position that is mostly touchdown or bust. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Baker and the Browns continue to keep the ball rolling. But if they do, I just think they're going to have a tough time against this Texans team in Houston. And I think if they do have success, it's probably going to be through Chubb. Let's talk about these matchups a little more in depth, Tom. Let's talk about Baltimore taking on the Falcons in Atlanta.
Yeah, this one's interesting. I like Gus Edwards here. I think he can have a big game. But really, after that, I'm scared off them. Lamar Jackson is okay here. Again, for me, coming into the last week of the season, it's risky. Me personally, I don't know if I'd be playing him. If you don't have any other better options, I get it. I can see you throwing him in there if you're streaming. But it's tough for me. I think the Falcons are going to come out and try to put up points and make Lamar Jackson play catch up, which at this point, I don't think he can really do. So, in all honesty, I'm a little bit scared of Jackson this week. But I like Gus Edwards and him on the Ravens side. That's really it. I'm not playing any of these receivers. If I had to play one, I'd play Crabtree because the targets he's seeing. But even then, I think he's a low wide receiver 2. I mean, high wide receiver 3. Very inconsistent this season. On the Falcons side of the ball, I think Matt Ryan has a decent game here. It's the Baltimore defense. We know how good they are, but they're at home. And Matt Ryan's been hot this season, so I think he's in store for a decent game here. You're never going to sit Julio. The other receivers, though, I'm staying away from. I'm staying away from Sanu, and I'm staying away from Ridley. I don't think they are in store for anything. Hooper is a good play in PPR, in my opinion, but in standard, I think I'm staying off it. This Baltimore's Ravens defense is legit, and I think this game they're coming hard. I mean, they're 6-5, so they still have a shot here, so they're not out of it.
Yeah, I think Sanu is definitely a sit. I think he's going to put up maybe 5 points in this game. Move the chains a little bit for them, as he has been. I do like Ridley, though. I think with his speed, they can get him into position to make some plays. Hooper, I'm staying away from. Don't like him. These linebackers for the Ravens are legit. They can stop him. On the flip side, though, I love Jackson. And the reason why you start a guy like Lamar Jackson is because you look at last week, Josh Allen, the number 4 quarterback on the week, put up roughly 160 yards and a touchdown, but he ran for nearly 100. Made him the number 4 QB on the week. So you take those numbers, and I think to myself, I can completely see Lamar Jackson putting up those type of numbers easily.
Yeah, like I said, I think he's an okay start. Just personally, for me, myself, I'd be a little bit nervous to start him going into your last week. If you need a win to make the playoffs, I'd be nervous about it. But again, I think he's an okay start because of what he's shown you. And I mentioned on the last podcast, I mean, the guy seems to be pretty safe to get you 15 points seems to be kind of his floor. So I think he's a safe start, but I don't expect a huge game from him here.
Let's talk Broncos-Bengals. Broncos coming into this game on a 2-game win streak. 2 big wins, like I said, over the Chargers, over the Steelers. Now they travel to Cincinnati. No Andy Dalton. What does that do for the Bengals?
Well, AJ Green said he's going to try to play. I think he's playing this weekend, right?
I think he's a go.
So I actually think Green's good for this game. I do like AJ Green. I'm willing to play him.
Yeah, he's one of those talents that it really doesn't matter who's throwing him the ball.
Yeah, he's one of these top receivers. Julio, AJ Green, Mike Thomas. You're not sitting these guys. So AJ Green plays. I think you start him. Jeff Driscoll, this matchup doesn't scare me. The fact that they're at Cincinnati is what makes it okay. If it was Denver, it'd be a different story. And this Denver defense is getting hot. And Bradley Chubb and Von Miller off the edge are real hot right now. So it definitely scares me a little bit. But I think Jeff Driscoll, I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't think there's much drop off from Andy Dalton to him, in my opinion. So I think, he's okay for the Bengals offense. And by no means am I saying start Jeff Driscoll at all, but I'm saying for the Bengals offense, Joe Mixon here, I think mediocre game. I don't think a huge game for him. But that being said, I do think they're going to try to feed Joe Mixon because with Andy Dalton out, they know their best bet is to go through the running back. So Mixon, I like here as a mid RB2.
Yeah, worries me a little bit, like you mentioned, with Bradley Chubb, Von Miller right there. He's going to have a tough time getting it going, but he could do some damage through the air. He's a great pass catcher.
I expect him to see volume.
What about Tyler Boyd?
Matchup scares me a little bit. More than anything, it's the fact that Jeff Driscoll is there, so I think it's hard to trust. So I think I'm staying away from Tyler Boyd. He's more of a low 2, high 3.
Yeah, we talked about the Broncos already. You don't like Sanders. I like him a little bit more than you, mainly because he's the only guy on this team aside from Phillip Lindsay. Cortland Sutton still coming on a little bit, but very rough around the edges right now. Not a fantasy play this week, but we do like Phillip Lindsay in this matchup.
He should have a huge game.
Let's go Rams-Lions. Playing in Detroit. You expect a big game along with Vegas?
Yeah, I think this is going to be a good game. In terms of fantasy, I think it's going to be high scoring. Stafford's been bad this season, but I think he shows up in this game. Like I said, they're at home. They know they have to score points against this Rams team. So I think he's going to show up here. I already talked about Kenny Galladay. LeGarrette Blount could be a sneaky start here. Rams aren't good against the run, and he's the guy in the backfield. So I think he could be a sneaky start for you. Other than that, on the Lions, I'm staying away from the rest of them. On the Rams, Jared Goff's a good play here. Todd Gurley, no-brainer. In terms of the receivers, I'm going Cooks, Woods, and then Reynolds. Reynolds is a desperation flex to me, but the Lions have given up 15 touchdowns to receiver this season, so quite a bit. So I think Cooks and Woods are good here. I'm giving Cooks a low wide receiver 1, and Woods is a high wide receiver 2 for me.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. The only one I'm probably not on the same page with you is Matt Stafford. He's just been struggling this year. I don't think there's any positive here losing Marvin Jones. I just don't see how he's supposed to play any better. Again, to lead back for the Rams defense, he's one of those guys. He's a fire starter. I think he's going to get that team jacked up, especially the secondary. We already know what the front for the Rams can do. So I expect him to have a tough day. LeGarrette Blount, I'm very iffy on because I always doubt this guy. I think a lot of people do. That's why he's a free agent in most of these leagues. But every time we doubt him, he shows up. So, and you have to give him credit because part of that is he's such a bruiser. He wears you down. By the fourth quarter, guys are not wanting to hit him the same way they were in the first quarter. So I think he could sneak in there for a touchdown. I think he's a low RB2 play this week. Let's go Cardinals-Packers, playing in Green Bay. You got to love that. You expect a big day from Aaron Rodgers with the season on the line?
I don't. This season, he just really hasn't been the old Aaron Rodgers that we know. I think there's a little bit of disarray going on between him and McCarthy. Everything there seems to be a little bit of friction. And also, I just think that they're going to run all day. Aaron Jones, I talked about my start of the week against the Cardinals. They're at home. I feel like they're going to run all over him. Rodgers is going to have to do a whole lot. So I just think that it's going to be kind of a mediocre day from him. Even Devontae Adams, he's definitely a start, but I think he's a low wide receiver 1 this week. I don't expect a huge game from him. So Aaron Jones I love, but I'm staying away from Jimmy Graham. I'm starting Devontae Adams. But other than that, I'm not too excited about any of the other guys. And on the Cardinals side, I actually like Larry Fitz and Christian Kirk this week. The Green Bay Packers have been bad against the receiver. They're third worst in terms of average fantasy points per game to receiver.
Well, how good of a day can you expect from these guys? With Josh Rosen leading them in Lambeau. Tough place to play.
Well, I'm not sure, but I think they're both startable. I mean, depends on your roster.
I like Fitz definitely more. I see Fitz being a wide receiver 2 type of day at best. For me, Kirk, still haven't seen enough from him consistently to feel confident playing him in a Week 13 matchup.
Yeah, I know it's at Green Bay, so that makes it tough. But over the last 4 weeks, only 3 teams have given up more passing yards than the Packers. And I just feel like they got to get... I mean, David Johnson here, I think he's going to be involved in the game, but I expect a mid RB2 to high RB2 week for him. I don't expect a huge game. So I actually think the receivers are in a better spot to succeed here. So I like Fitzgerald and Kirk.
All right, the Browns travel to Houston to take on the Texans. What do you like in this game?
Like Deshaun Watson, I think he's going to have a big game here. Like DeAndre Hopkins, I think a high wide receiver 1 here. And like you said, Demaryius Thomas, I'm okay on him, but I think he's more of a flex play. I don't expect a huge game here. And then Lamar Miller, I think he's a mid RB2. I think they'll get him going. The Houston offense is hot right now, and they've just been on fire really the whole season after they lost those first 3 and they won 8 in a row. So they've been really hard to stop. They're at home too, which makes them more dangerous. So I like those guys. On the Browns side, I'm really not big on any of the Browns guys. I actually like Njoku. I know you weren't big on him, but I think Njoku's in store for a big game here. Out of all the Browns receiving threats, he's definitely my favorite. I'm staying away from Jarvis Landry. At this point in the season, he just hasn't done anything. He saw a ton of targets in the beginning of the season. His targets have been going down, but he just hasn't been productive either way. I already said I don't like Mayfield in this spot, so I'm really kind of scared off of all the Browns. The one guy I can see having a decent day here is Nick Chubb. But I think that's more of a mid RB2, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely the most talented player they have on that offense. But he's got a tough matchup here. It's a road game for them. You know, they snapped their road game losing streak last week, but it was against the Bengals. So I think this is a much tougher matchup for them. If Baker is able to get something going here and make this a game, then, you know, I'll have to reevaluate the way I'm looking at him. But I just think this is going to be a Texans game, top to bottom. Colts go down to Jacksonville to take on the Jags. What do you think Andrew Luck looks like this week? He's been red hot all season. Tougher matchup here against the Jags. T.Y. Hilton, a little banged up coming in here, but he's going to go. He loses Jack Doyle.
Yeah, this is a tough matchup for him. I like the tight ends in this game because Andrew Luck throws to them a lot, and the Jags are giving up 7 touchdowns to the tight end position this year. So I see Ebron getting involved. Doyle's out. So I think Ebron gets involved even more than he has been this season. Marlon Mack, already said, I'm scared off of him. I'm staying away. It's a tough matchup. You mentioned T.Y. I'm not big on the receivers either, but I see Luck being this to me, I know he's been hot and he's been on fire this whole season, but I think this is a low game for him, a low QB1 game. I think he just has a mediocre game. I don't see the receivers having a big game here. I like the tight ends, but I don't see a big game from Luck.
And if Mack does sit and Nyheim Hines gets the start, how good can you feel about that? If you're in the kind of position where you have to play him, I mean, what kind of day can people expect?
Very low, mediocre day. This Jags defense is just legit. They haven't given a touchdown the past 4 weeks. I'm scared off them
to the running back position.
And they're at Jacksonville, so I'd be scared off Nyheim Hines. I don't like Marlon Mack, so I certainly don't like Nyheim Hines.
On the flip side of that, no Leonard Fournette. He's serving that 1-game suspension from the Bills altercation he got into. What do you think of a guy like TJ Yeldon or Carlos Hyde? Who do you expect to really be the better fantasy play here?
I think it's going to be TJ Yeldon. I think that he's definitely the safer play. I'd be scared to start Carlos Hyde personally. And against this team, I see TJ Yeldon having some success here. The Colts run defense, they're kind of middle of the pack. But only 3 teams have given up more receiving yards to running back than the Colts. And we know TJ Yeldon's a great receiver out of the backfield. Not to mention that whenever he plays, they seem to use him a ton. They hand him the ball, they throw to him a lot. He seems to be the focal point when he starts. So I'm certainly not starting any of the Jags receivers, me personally. So I actually like TJ Yeldon a lot in this game. But other than that, I'm staying away from them. I know Cody Kessler's getting the start, so that could change the offense a little bit. But in my mind, that also just means they're going to be feeding the running backs, giving the ball to the guys that they trust a little bit more. So I see a big game for Yeldon. And the receivers, I'm staying away from.
All right, let's go Bills-Dolphins. Not the most exciting matchup here from a fantasy perspective. I think Josh Allen turns in another nice day with the rushing floor that he's been providing so far this season.
I don't trust it. I mean, the fact that they're at Miami makes me a little bit scared. But the fact that Josh Allen just hasn't been consistent. I know he had a big game last week and he's been coming on hot a little bit, but Miami, they've been pretty good against the quarterback this season. They've given up 20 touchdowns, but they have 17 picks against quarterbacks. So I think it's dangerous. I would not be playing Josh Allen in my last week.
They have how many picks?
17.
That's a staggering number.
Yeah, it is. So I wouldn't be playing him at all. The one guy I do like on the Bills side is LaShawn McCoy against this Miami run defense, which is very bad. They've given up 1,300 yards, 9 touchdowns this season. They're just a bad run defense. I think McCoy's in store for a big game here. Other than that, I don't think you can trust any of the Bills here. I don't like Allen. I don't like the other guys. The fact that it's in Miami. But in my opinion, if anybody does anything here, it's McCoy. But I think a mid RB2 day for him probably at best.
Yeah, Tannehill's going to be playing. Do you think that does anything for the receivers in Miami?
The one guy I'm looking out for is Kenny Stills. He came out this past week and he mentioned he can't throw the ball to himself. He mentioned how he's getting open and other guys getting open. Kenny Stills is probably an underrated player. He's one of the better deep threats in the NFL. And he's actually a better receiver than people think. I personally believe. So I could see him getting a little bit of the squeaky wheel, treatment here, getting a little bit of the targets here, and then we'll see. It's too hard to trust. Now, like I said, going into this week, I really would be scared off of these guys and probably not playing any of them. Kenyon Drake and Frank Gore, different story for both of these guys. I think low RB2 days for both of them. Bills defense is actually pretty good, and I'm nervous, and this is your final week basically, so it makes you nervous if you're starting them.
Yeah, I would hope you have better plays than those guys. Bills' run defense, pretty much middle of the pack. So you can't love that this week. Let's talk about the Bears-Giants game. No Trubisky in this one. So as we mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, Chase Daniel will get the start. Do you have any interest in playing any of these receivers for the Bears? A guy like Gabriel, Miller.
No, I think there's better options out there. I mean, at this point, they've all had okay games here and there. None of these guys have been consistent this season, and that was with Mitch Trubisky. So with Chase Daniel back there, I'm not playing any of these guys. I'm scared off of them.
And the Giants, Saquon Barkley having an awesome season. Tough matchup here. They are playing in New York, so that's good for him. But this Bear defense is no rollover.
Yeah, I mean, this Bears defense, we know how good they are. You can't sit Saquon Barkley at this point. You just can't. He's just been too good. He's an absolute stud. He gets everything there.
I guess, let me ask you this, because you're right. No one's going to sit him. Who do you think is going to prevail here in this battle? Do you think he puts up a typical Saquon day? Do you think you have to temper expectations against this Bears defense?
Yeah, I definitely think you have to temper expectations. It's the Bears defense. They're good. The fact that it's in New Jersey, at Giants Stadium, that makes it, you're a little bit, more excited about it, I guess. But I do think the Giants can actually win this game because Chase Daniel is the quarterback and they're on the road. And the Giants have been coming on hot a little bit. So I actually can see them winning this game. But it'd be a heavy dose of Saquon Barkley.
I think Beckham has a mediocre day here. I think it's going to be tough for him. He could very well get in the end zone. He's one of the best in the game. Eli Manning has been playing better. But I don't think you're going to have an amazing Odell Beckham game this week. What about Sterling Shepard?
I actually like the receivers in this game. The Bears have given up the 7th most receiving yards this season. So they really haven't been great against wide receivers. So I like Sterling Shepard and Beckham. But in terms of starting, I think Sterling Shepard's a high 3. Beckham is a low 1 this week. But I think they can both, do a little damage here. If they're, Saquon's going to be involved, but if there's an area to attack the Bears, I think it's through the air.
Panthers taking on the Bucks in Tampa Bay. Cam Newton, McCaffrey. Every time we talk about the Panthers, we talk about how much we love these guys. They're going to eat this week against a very poor Tampa Bay defense. Anybody else you have any interest in here? DJ Moore, Curtis Samuel.
I like DJ Moore in this game. I think he's in store for a big game here. Devin Funchess leads the team in targets, but you wouldn't think that after watching them play for most of the season. He seems like he hasn't really been there since the beginning of the season. He hasn't done much. DJ Moore's been coming on stronger lately, so I actually think DJ Moore's in store for a big game here against this Bucs team who's been bad against receiver. They've given up 17 touchdowns this season to receivers. Only the Rams have given up more. So I think DJ Moore's in store for one here, and I could see Funchess getting in the end zone, but I don't expect a big yardage day here.
Yeah, I don't think you can expect it, that's for sure. What about on the Bucs side of the ball? Peyton Barber? Where's he at?
Oh, man. Peyton
RB2.
Barber, that's a low RB2 for me. Maybe like a 3. The Carolina defense is good. And more than that, the Bucs offense is just hard to trust. They don't run the ball. They throw the ball all over the field. They don't give their guy a lot of carries. So I think it's too tough to trust Peyton Barber.
And for the Bucs, no Deshaun Jackson this week. Obviously, O.J. Howard being on IR. Cameron Brate has a good connection with Jameis Winston. You think he has another good game here?
I think he has a huge game here. They're at home. The Carolina Panthers are worst against the tight end. On the season, they've given up the most touchdowns. Over the last 4 weeks, they've given up the most touchdowns with 4. And if there's one thing that Cameron Brate does, it's score. So I think Cameron Brate's in store for a big game here. Not to mention Deshaun Jackson's also out, so he's going to be involved a little more, I think. I love Cameron Brate this week.
What about Chris Godwin or Adam Humphries?
Both of these guys are tough. If I'm taking one, I'm taking Humphries because he's been hot lately, and because Jameis, like I said before, Jameis seems to have better chemistry with Humphries, and Fitzpatrick seems to have better chemistry with Godwin. Godwin at this point is a talented player. He's too hard to trust in a lineup this week with the implications, so I'm staying away from him. If I had to pick one of those guys, it's Adam Humphries for sure.
All right, let's keep it moving. Chiefs and Raiders playing in Oakland. I mean, looking at this game, you have a 9-2 team versus a 2-9 team. All signs point to the Chiefs putting up a monster amount of points and blowing them out of the water. You, however, seem to think that the Raiders are going to put up a little bit of a better fight.
Yeah, I could actually see the Raiders winning this game. Now, that's crazy, but I said I could see the Cowboys beating the Saints, and they did that. I just think that the Raiders are going to come out hot. Derek Carr knows he has to throw the ball. He has to keep up with his team. And because of what's going on with the Chiefs right now, what just happened with Kareem Hunt, I honestly think this is going to be an interesting game. I think the Raiders are going to come to play here. I expect a big game out of Carr and Cook.
Yeah, and I admit, you got the Dallas Cowboy call right. I don't like this call though, only because at least with the Cowboys they have the talent. I don't see the talent on this Raiders team. I think their most talented option is Jared Cook and Doug Martin, and I think the Chiefs have the kind of offense to put up enough points to take Martin right out of the game. So we're not seeing eye to eye on this one, but hey, anything's possible any given Sunday, right? As far as fantasy plays this week, would you feel confident playing a guy like Doug Martin?
Doug Martin, that one would be tough. I think he's a mid RB2 this week. Kansas City is in the top 10 in terms of most yards given up to running back this season, and they've given up 9 touchdowns. They've also given up 6 receiving touchdowns to the running back, which is the most in the league. So I think Jalen Richard could get in the end zone here. I think combined, both the Raiders running backs are good for mid RB2. If I had to pick one to play, it would be Martin. But again, I could see Jalen Richard getting in the end zone here. Like I said, Chiefs have given up more receiving touchdowns to running back than anybody in the league.
And for the Chiefs, look, Kelsey, he's a number 1 tight end. He's going to put up a monster day. Tyreek Hill, we know what his talent is. He's a top 10 receiver. He should have a huge day with no Sammy Watkins there. He's a no-brainer, fire him up guy. And what about Chris Conley?
I do like Chris Conley. I don't expect a huge game from him here, but with Patrick Mahomes throwing the ball and with this Chiefs offense, I could easily see Conley getting in the end zone, but I think it's a mediocre to have like a 40-50 yards and a touchdown type day.
And Spencer Ware?
Oh, he should eat. The Raiders have given up the most rushing yards this season, more than any other team. More rushing yards than any other team, sorry. So I think Spencer Ware, we've seen it before when he gets in there. I don't think anybody would say Spencer Ware is a super talented running back, but I think everybody would agree he's more than capable and he can put up the numbers against a team like this, the Raiders. I think he's in store for a big game here.
Let's talk Jets-Titans playing in Tennessee. Like from the outside looking in, it's an ugly fantasy matchup. Not sexy at all. Mariota put up a nice week last week against the Texans, even though they got blown out of that game. You think he has a good game here at home against the Jets?
Yeah, I actually do like him here. I think that the Titans have been, inconsistent this season, probably mediocre at best, but Mariota seems to be coming on a little stronger. The Jets don't scare anybody, so I like Mariota this week. I think he could be in store for a good game. And then I also like Corey Davis. The Jets are in the top 10 worst teams against receiver. The 10th worst against receiver in terms of average fantasy points per game given up to receiver. They're giving up 12 touchdowns, which is a lot. And in terms of yardage, only 3 teams have given up more yards to receiver than the Jets this season. So I actually think Corey Davis has a big game here. I like him and Mariota. It's the running backs that I'm nervous about. I don't like Henry at all. I don't think you can start him at this point. Dion Lewis is a desperation flex to me.
What about Jonnu Smith and Chris Herndon? The tight ends from both of these teams. Who do you think has the better day?
Tennessee Titans are the best team against the tight end this season. They still haven't given up a touchdown this season to any tight end. They've only given up 390 receiving yards on the season. So I don't like Herndon. Now, he is the only option, really, the Jets have, seemingly. So I think, he could get the targets, but I just don't expect him to do much with it. I could see him getting you like 50 yards, but I don't think he gets in the end zone.
Which is kind of what he's been doing these past couple games.
True, but I think this Titans team, they're at home. I think this defense is going to be all over them. So I'm scared off of really all the Jets guys. And Chris Herndon would be the guy I'd start if I'm picking one of them. But again, this Titans defense is legit, especially against the tight end. So I think it's a monster day for the Titans defense. I don't expect much from the Jets here at all.
Any interest in Crowell?
No, I'm staying away. They're just too good. The Titans. I just think it's a huge blow-up game for the Titans defense at home.
Vikings take on the Patriots in New England. What do you expect from the Vikings? You think Dalvin Cook has a good game here?
Dalvin Cook just hasn't shown me the consistency this season. They're at New England. I can see New England. I don't think they're going to put up a ton of points and get ahead of the Vikings, but I think it's more of a passing game for them. I like the receivers better here, Diggs and Thielen. I'm nervous about Cook and what he's done so far this season, so I'm scared of it a little bit. I think he's a low RB2.
For whatever reason, I have a good feeling about this Vikings team this weekend. I think it's going to be a big day for Diggs, Thielen, and Cook. I think Cook's been on the verge of busting off some big plays, and I think this is the game where he breaks through and he puts up the kind of day that you were hoping you were going to get when you drafted him in your first or early second round. On the Patriots side of the ball, You think Sony Michel eats again? Coming off a big game last week. He's been really their most consistent guy from a fantasy perspective.
No, I expect a mediocre day from him. Mid RB2. He has talent, and he's shown that he's a hard guy to sit, but Vikings defense have only given up 3 touchdowns on the season. They're a legit run defense. I'm nervous about it. And in terms of rushing yards, only 4 teams have given up less rushing yards than the Vikings this season. I know they're at New England, but I don't expect a huge day from Sony Michel. I just don't think he can get going against his Vikings defense, really.
Same thing with Edelman, Josh Gordon, Gronk.
I like Gronk the best out of all these guys. I think that they're going to make an effort to get him going. Josh Gordon and Julian Edelman. Julian Edelman to me is a mid wide receiver 2, and then Josh Gordon, he's a low RB wide receiver 2 to me. The consistency hasn't been there. He's put up some decent yardage lately. He's put up some okay numbers, but I don't think him and Brady have really developed that chemistry yet. There's not really that. There just doesn't seem to be that connection. They don't seem to be clicking and hitting on all cylinders. It makes me nervous, and I feel like I've been saying this whole episode, but this is week 13. So this is the week where you really got to be set. You got
to be sure about these guys you're putting out there. You got to really feel good about them because your season's on the line for a lot of people. I do agree, though. I do like Edelman a little bit more. He's somewhat matchup proof in his floor. He seems to give you that consistent yardage, especially in PPR. Obviously, he gets a big boost there. So I think I like him. I'm not sold on Gordon this week. I mean, tough defense. Just not gonna feel comfortable rolling him out there.
Yeah, I will say this: the Vikings have only given 8 touchdowns to receivers this whole season. Only 3 teams have given up less. So, like I said, kind of from the beginning, I'm okay with Edelman, like you said, because of him and Brady. There's a floor there for him. In PPR, he's definitely a safe start for sure. I expect a middle of the pack wide receiver 2 kind of numbers from him. Gordon, I'm nervous about. I just don't expect a big day. The Vikings defense is they're legit against the run and receivers. So I'm a little bit nervous about these guys.
49ers travel to Seattle to take on the Seahawks. Can you feel confident starting anyone on the 49ers? Kittle would be your guy. Breda. How good of a day can you expect from them?
Well, I think Breida is okay start here, mainly because of what he's done this season already. He's been pretty consistent in showing what he can do. The Seahawks have been okay against the run, kind of middle of the pack, but it comes down to that classic volume play. He's their stud. He's their guy that you're going to want to start. So I think Breida's actually okay here, but I think high RB2 is kind of what I'm looking at. George Kittle is the one that scares me. Seattle Seahawks are the 3rd best team against tight end in terms of average fantasy points per game. They've only given up 360 yards and 3 touchdowns on the season. So this makes me nervous. The fact that they're at Seattle makes me more nervous. I get it. You're not going to sit George Kittle. I'm not telling you to sit George Kittle, but temper expectations. I don't see a big game here. I can see him getting some yards, but I don't think he gets in the end zone.
Yeah, I think he has a rough time in this matchup. I mean, who else is his defense supposed to try and lock down? I think Breida has the explosiveness at least to make a couple big plays. So I like him. I feel okay starting him. Seahawks, you got to start Russell Wilson. He should have a nice day. Any interest in, and you got to start Lockett as well. He's been awesome this season.
I was about to say Lockett was going to be my start of the week. The 49ers have been bad against receiver this year.
He's been playing awesome this season.
Yeah, he's been so hot. He might be the most underrated fantasy receiver on the season in terms of where he ranks and the numbers he's put up. Like you talked about in the last episode, 8 touchdowns. I mean, you're good for the season, right?
I think that would surprise anybody.
Yeah, and so he's been very consistent. He's been their most consistent threat. And obviously with Doug Baldwin, what's been going on with him all season, being kind of banged up, the fact that David Moore, I actually do like David Moore this week. I think he has a shot to get in the end zone, but kind of like what David Moore has been all season, I think he's kind of a 60 yards and a touchdown guy for you. I don't think he's going to do much more than that, which you're taking that all day. It's a good game, don't get me wrong, but I think Lockett and Moore both have a shot to get in the end zone here. I like both of them. I love Lockett. 49ers have been bad against receiver. They're giving up 15 touchdowns this season, so I like both the receivers, and they're at home. You love Seattle when they're at home. Different team.
And what about Chris Carson in this matchup?
So I'm nervous about it. They're at Seattle, which you definitely like, but Chris Carson, he's coming on hot lately, but he really hasn't been that consistent all season. And the Seahawks, they go with the hot hand. But 2 things. They came out this week and said they want to get Rashad Penny going more. They said they're going to get him going this week. So it makes you nervous. You think Chris Carson's going to lose some carries. But over the last 4 weeks, the 49ers have given up 228 rushing yards and 1 touchdown. That's shutdown. So their defense is better than people think, especially against the run. I think at best he's a mid RB2 at best.
Let's talk about the Sunday night game. Exciting matchup. Chargers travel to Pittsburgh to take on the Steelers. Obviously, the most notable thing here is no Melvin Gordon, so Eckler will get the start. Is he an RB2 or an RB1?
I think he's an RB2, and I think he might be a low RB2 at that. Steelers are the 10th best team against running back in terms of average fantasy points per game. So I think it's going to be a tough matchup for him. They're at Pittsburgh as well. The defense seems to be getting hotter and hotter over there, kind of clicking on all cylinders in a sense. So I'm nervous about Eckler. I know he's going to get the volume, but I'm scared of it personally. The Steelers' run defense has been pretty good.
Yeah, I understand. A lot of people are excited about him because of the opportunity. It's a no-brainer. But this is a tough matchup. Steelers, I think, are going to play fired up in this game, coming off a game they should not have lost to the Broncos. We like the receivers. Juju coming off a huge game. Brown didn't get a touchdown last week, broke his streak. I think he bounces back, has another big day here along with Juju. What about the Chargers? What can you expect here? Tyrell Williams may or may not play this week. Mike Williams, we know, is very hit or miss. Keenan Allen is the most consistent one here, but kind of a tough matchup playing Pitt.
Yeah, I'm nervous with all these guys. I think Keenan's a high RB2 or high wide receiver 2. Mike Williams, he's boom or bust. If you're putting him in your lineup, you know that's what you're going to get with him. I'm nervous with it because they're at Pittsburgh with this defense who's good against receivers. So I'm scared about him. Keenan Allen's a safe start because of the volume he sees. But again, like I said, I think it's a high wide receiver 2, probably at best. Mike Williams, man, that's a real roll of the dice. He paid off for you last week when he gave you 2 touchdowns, but again, like we said, he might not. He could get you 0 targets this week. He's nervous. It's inconsistent.
I agree. If the news comes out that Tyrell Williams is out of this game, I do like him more.
Oh yeah.
But for me, his ceiling versus his floor is just such a wide range. He could put up 4 points. He could put up 20 points. It scares me a lot. I honestly don't like a lot of the Chargers in this matchup. I don't even like Rivers in this matchup, as hot as he's been playing. I think this is going to be a tough game for them. I expect the Steelers to put a beating on them, to be honest.
Yeah, over the last 4 weeks, the Steelers are giving up 1 touchdown to wide receivers. So that definitely makes you scared. Keenan Allen is not a big touchdown guy. He's been coming on hot lately. He's doing his usual second half, resurgence where he gets.
He's going to have to get some touchdowns if they have a chance in this game.
I see him getting targets and yards, but I don't know. I don't. It'd be tough for him to get in the end zone. The volume he has makes him a play for sure. But like I said, I think he's wide receiver 2 material this week.
I'm definitely not advising this as a start by any stretch of the imagination, but I could see Antonio Gates getting in the end zone in this matchup. Let's talk about the Redskins and Eagles game, Monday night matchup, division game, important game for this division. Redskins 6-5, Eagles 5-6. Let's be honest, the Eagles have been very disappointing so far. They're not meshing as an offense right now, but they're playing at home under the bright lights of Monday Night Football. What do you expect from these guys in this game?
For the Eagles?
Yeah, for the Eagles side.
So I think Wentz comes out hot. Now, I said that last week, and he was a complete bust, but I think he comes out hot. They won 4 of the 5 last primetime games against the Redskins. They're at home. But like you said, this is a huge game. They're 5-6. The Redskins are 6-5. I see Wentz coming out here and throwing hot like Zach Ertz here. You're never going to sit Zach Ertz. I get it. I think Alshon gets in the end zone here. I don't think he has a big game here, but I think he gets in the end zone. I could even see him getting 2, but kind of having that Alshon day where he maybe gets you 50 yards but 2 touchdowns. I could see him doing that. The other guys, Golden Tate, I'm scared off of. I do like Josh Adams. I think he's a good play. The fact they're going to get him involved more. Now, Darren Sproles being back definitely makes you nervous.
It's hard to know with him coming back since week 1, I believe. It's just hard to imagine how much he's going to get mixed into the fold. I do actually think Tate gets in the end zone. I like your take on Jeffrey. I think this is a good Eagles game this week. We have to remember, they're also playing against a Colt McCoy-led Washington team right now. And we saw him struggle against Dallas. We know Dallas is a tough team. They were playing in Dallas. This isn't any easier of a matchup. I think the Eagles need this win more. They're the former Super Bowl champions, obviously. They're playing for more than just their season. They're playing for the respect that they've lost over the past couple games.
Yeah, and on the Redskins side of the ball, I already talked about, I don't like Jordan Reed. I don't really like Colt McCoy. The one guy I do like is Adrian Peterson. Over the last 4 weeks, only the Bengals have been worse in terms of average fantasy points per game to the running back. The Eagles have given up 455 yards and 4 touchdowns. So they seem to be kind of sliding a little bit against the run. So I kind of do like Peterson this game, and I think the Redskins will lean on him because of the fact that they're at Philly, and they know they have Colt back there who's more of a game manager. So I think Peterson's okay for a big game here. Or I shouldn't say big game. I think he's kind of a mid to high RB2 this week.
Well, that wraps up the previews for this weekend's game. Hey, we wish you guys all the best of luck. Big week 13. Hopefully we see you guys next week because you're playing for your playoffs and potentially a championship. If not, don't forget about daily fantasy. The season can go on, guys. So keep that in mind. I know this is a very stressful week for a lot of us. We'll be on Twitter as usual, at the Fantasy Den. Send us your last minute questions. We'll be on there all day tomorrow.
The one thing I wanted to touch on was, this is the last week before playoffs start for the majority of leagues. Guys, make sure you go with what your gut tells you. You can listen to every podcast in the world. You can read every site in the world. You can do who do I start here? Should I hit this guy? You can do all that, but go with your guts. Go with your instinct. If you see something in a game, I think this guy's going to have a big game because go with your guts. Because at the end of the day, win or lose, you can say, well, I put in who I thought. There's nothing worse than losing a fantasy game because you took somebody else's advice.
Very true.
And you had somebody on the bench you thought was going to go off. So just trust your gut and go with that. Because at the end of the day, if you lose, hey, at least it was your call.
Very true. I like that take a lot. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review us on iTunes. Catch us on Spotify, Google Play, Stitcher, all those things, no matter what device you're listening to. We appreciate the support, guys. Make sure you tell a friend. Word of mouth is the best way for us to grow, and that's all we want to do is continue to do this, keep having fun with fantasy football, and help you guys win your matchups. Thanks, guys. We'll catch you next time.